Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. This is episode 203, and I'm hoping that this will be a cough and hiccup free episode for you all. My voice is back, guys. It's feeling a little bit better, so thank you, modern medicine. I'm Aaron. With me, as always, the other members of the Who Dat Jedi Council, Dave and Fredo. How's it going, guys?
Going pretty well.
Can't complain. Cannot complain.
You know, there is nothing worse. Actually, there are two things, because I as a singer, there are two things that are horrible, and both have happened to me. Is one, when I was playing in a group and we're coming into like the third verse or something like that. There's a little instrumental break, and you're just like 6 beats away from entering that verse, and you have no idea how it starts. That is the most frightening thing on the planet. Then it's like right as you get there, it's just the words just barf out of your head. Blah, okay, you get it. But the other is now as a solo act. In between songs, I take a sip of Guinness, and then I start singing, and then sometimes a burp just gets like caught right in the gut, and you're like, I'm either gonna belch in the middle of this song or throw up all over the place. It's like you go through this mental gymnastics to keep yourself from becoming the 6th grade kid who can belch the alphabet. So yeah, that was last week when I had the hiccups. So I apologize for the abrupt ending to the episode, but yeah, feeling better. So hooray.
It's like learning how not to fart in class or in school or work or what have you. You just have to train those muscles.
Have you guys seen the movie Step Brothers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they're interviewing together, and they let the fart out, and it's like, you really couldn't hold it in. I thought it was gonna be quiet. Yeah. So anyway. Welcome to the podcast. We're here to talk about Star Wars and gas. Tonight's episode was all about Bespin. Hey, but Saints training camp has started, so we're getting closer to football season, so that's exciting. Yeah.
We're about a month away or so from college football kicking off.
Yeah, and we keep
And
getting
preseason.
rain. I mean, as we're starting to record right now, it's starting to rain here in Gentilly again. So this is like, I don't know, this is like the upside down from the last couple of years. So yeah, right, Dave? Fingers crossed, toes crossed. It's like, don't want to jinx anything, but it's kind of the way. I mean, when my wife and I would be visiting New Orleans, my sister would always say, yeah, about 2 o'clock, it's just going to rain. It's going to rain for about 30 minutes, and it's going to be humid. And that's kind of the way it's been going. So,
yeah, well, it really takes me back to living in South Florida, because that was what it was. You get a rain shower in the afternoon, you get hot, humid, and muggy afterwards, but it would balance things, so you wouldn't have to deal with 100+ temperatures.
Yeah, when you go to Disney World in the summertime, that's what you plan. It's like, don't schedule your fast passes for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when you have a late lunch, because you're going to be indoors for, like I said, about 30 minutes. So yeah, but
Having just come back from South Florida, I can confirm all that. And what was funny is somehow it ended up being that New Orleans was getting more rain than even South Florida, weirdly enough.
so anyway, don't want to jinx anything, but
Okay, so just to go back, we've talked about Star Wars, we've talked about bodily functions, now we talked about the weather.
yeah,
We are hitting the
You got the
old man
Saints in
grand
there
slam.
briefly too. Yeah.
Football, yeah, we are hitting the old man grand slam, kids.
yeah. This is a coffee group. Yeah,
Hey, I can give you some Star Wars news. I have recently finished reading Heir to the Empire.
Nice.
Yes, and so that was my first read through of that classic.
All right, well,
Legends material.
Give a brief review.
I liked it. I How do I even put this? I've read so many of the author's subsequent works that it felt maybe not amateurish, but like less polished. You
It
know?
was kind of his first. It was his first go around.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
little green.
and like I should have expected that, but I didn't really expect that, and I didn't expect it to be quite so fan servicey. But all in all, it's good. It's kind of like alternate universe Star Wars. Um, it sort of lines up, but not really.
Luke
So
Skywalker and the Multiverse of Madness.
exactly.
And
I
this
think
is
it's worth it though for people who haven't like ever bothered. Um, go back and experience some of that Legends material. It's pretty good stuff.
one of the things I always got to remind myself, particularly when you're talking about, I mean, Heir to the Empire, you're talking outside of the novelizations, and it maybe it just had been Splinter of the Mind's Eye was the only other, non-movie product. I'm looking at the original Marvel Comics Star Wars line. But really, I mean, Heir to the Empire is the beginning of the Legends, the expanded universe, which became Legends. So it's easy to forget that there were no rules really. There wasn't anything like, okay, this is what we want you to follow. This is the way it's supposed to go. They didn't have any kind of set ideas for how to go. They just simply told them, okay, Timothy Zahn, write a follow up to Return of the Jedi, and you can do whatever you want. And it's, particularly when you get to that period of, the early to mid '90s when they're starting, they know they want to get Star Wars product out there because you get that, you get the Dark Empire, Dark Horse line, and it's like we know we have some cool stories to tell, we just don't know exactly how. And they eventually do figure it out, but it's surprising how no handrails, no ideas. There were no bad ideas because they didn't know what was a bad idea at the point.
So I want to know how you pronounce the name. What was your head every time you read the name? How did you pronounce it?
Which one? Thrawn's like family name?
No,
Or
the Joris.
Jorus, the last name with the two
oh
apostrophes.
that dude, yeah. The Dark Jedi. Because they didn't use the term Sith
No, I'm
in
just
the
wondering how you
in the
pronounce his last name.
yeah.
That's all I want to know.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't care.
I
Like
think,
I don't have to know.
and I really think Timothy Zahn, that he's the one that started all this nonsense about how to, putting
20 apostrophes.
weird punctuation in names. So, um, anyway, yeah, well, cool, cool. Are you gonna move on to the next of the trilogy then?
Yeah, I got the whole set, and we're going vacation in about a week, and so I've got the next two to read, and
Cool. Laying
feeling good about that.
laying on a beach and reading Star Wars. Cool. That
Hanging out in
works.
the mountains, but yeah.
All right, that works too. Cool. All right. Well, tonight we're gonna be kind of putting a putting a bow and ribbon and in a box and up in the attic. The Acolyte. We're gonna finish our discussion about that. Talk about the season as a whole. Um, I'll forewarn you guys. I mean, I'm not negative on it, but I'm not over the moon about it. So uh,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be a hater, but I did rewatch a good number of them. I'll be honest, I skipped over the first flashback
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
episode, and but I had watched it previously, so I've rewatched them all. But anyway, it's just yeah, we'll talk about it, but it's not going to be like I said. I'm not going to be a hater, and I think we might all be in the same boat that we're not going to be a hater. But I don't necessarily know if it's going to be all unicorns and rainbows. Is that fair to say?
Fair to say.
And I actually have an idea that I'm going to pitch to you guys. I wonder because of I started thinking about the things that I've been critical about with some of especially the Disney Plus stuff, and I think there's a common denominator. Um, so I'll pitch that to you. So, but first, we have to do some trivia to get our brains warmed up in Star Wars. All right. So, Dave, to you. You're welcome. Whose house band includes the musicians Max Rebo, Cy Snoodles, and Droopy McCool? Whose house band includes the musicians Max Rebo, Cy Snoodles, and Droopy McCool?
That would be Jabba the Hutt.
I'm sorry, it's Arsenio Hall. Um, one of my favorite Robot Chicken is when Max Rebo, comes out of the wreckage of Jabba's sail barge, and he's got to make the gig. And he's just the stereotypical jazz musician. I ain't missed no gig. And Size Noodles and Droopy McCool died in vain, man. Yeah, that's just one of my absolute favorite Robot Chickens.
Robot Chicken.
All right. Um, Fredo, to you. And I'm sorry.
Size noodles.
We've had this one before, so you have a 50-50 shot. What language is spoken by Fode, the red-tinted head of the pod race announcer? What language is spoken by Fode, the red-tinted head of the pod racer announcer? I'm thinking that you got this one, actually.
Is it Huttese?
Is Galactic Basic.
See, that's why I hated that question the first time.
Yeah.
Both times I go, it's Huttese. I know it's basic. That's the voice of what's his name, the comedian.
All right. So,
Uh,
and to me, a nice softball to me here.
Of course.
What two little words help convince Han to join the rescue of Princess Leia? What two little words help convince Han to join the rescue of Princess Leia? She's rich. Technically, is that two words? It's a good contraction. So can we raise an issue with Trivial Pursuit Star Wars Saga Edition? Anyway.
You and I got the softballs. Fredo got the difficult one.
I'm noticing a pattern here.
Will you remember that Fode spoke basic? Come on, just put that in your brain for safekeeping, Fredo. All right. Well, we got a little bit of news. By the way, I'll throw out a little bit of something here. Comic-Con is going on. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law are in Comic-Con, and I think I told you guys in our private chat they got a special screening of Deadpool and Wolverine. And apparently it was going to be with the cast. I haven't heard, or members of the cast. I haven't heard how that all went or if it has gone yet. But so sometime we might have to bring him on and talk about Comic-Con just to see what that whole mess is like. But
particularly now because for a while there, every major movie studio is putting all their stuff at Comic-Con, and I think they've moved away from that in the last few years. Like, there's, Marvel Studios, DC, they were all doing big things at Comic-Con, and now they've kind of scaled a lot of that back in the last few years. So it's interesting to consider how, much same way as E3 is no longer E3, Comic-Con's no longer Comic-Con, even though it still retains some value in the name.
And
so speaking of comic,
most of the Star Wars stuff is announced at D23. So anyway, yes. Speaking of Marvels.
So speaking of Comic Con, Marvel Comics did come out and announce that they are going to, starting this October, we are going to get they're going to be concluding. They're just concluded with Darth Vader 50 and I believe Star Wars 50. They're concluding all their lines, all the series up to or during the Galactic Civil War, starting in October with the three comic book series, the Battle of Jakku. They're going to start bridging the gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. So we're finally going to start getting comic books and storylines and ideas. I mean, we've got some of that. There's been a few novels set in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, but this is Marvel Comics actually diving headlong into all of that. And the first part of it is going to be three issue limited series titled The Battle of Jakku. So it's Battle of Jakku Insurgency Rising 1, 2, and 3, and it's supposed to cover everything that we didn't know to ask about the Battle of Jakku, and it was taking a part of it. So it'll be interesting to see. Actually, it's a four issue series. I'm sorry. Uh, of course, all that's going to be connected to Marvel's. I mean, so yeah, Marvel's Unlimited app and be available at your local bookstores, comic book stores, hobby stores. So it's interesting. They're actually moving forward.
Well, I have the Marvel Unlimited app, so I'll have to read it when it comes out. So, it's kind of funny. Putting back in my day, kids.
Good news, everyone! I'm in terrible pain.
It's like we had to wait 15 like flipping years for a continuation of anything. The first time we even heard the name Jakku was in The Force Awakens, and we see Star Destroyers and X-Wings. And then I can't remember when it was first mentioned, the Battle of Jakku. And it's like, all right, cool, there's a battle. So now they're having a story about it, and people are like, yes, we're going to be able to hear what that was. And it's like, I mean, really? That's what's keeping you up late at night is what happened at the Battle of Jakku? But anyway, it'll be fine. It's, more Star Wars, which is cool. Um, so anyway,
I want to say, though, that was 9 years ago. That's hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Start considering how much, because I want to say, like, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, you may have read Lost Stars. Yeah, I'm sure, Aaron, you read it as well. Some of that, the idea of bridging that period of Return of the Jedi to Force Awakens and kind of telling us how things ended up how they did come in novel format, but
Yeah.
I guess now they feel like filling in even further the gap. So it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, all that's coming out in October. It seems interesting that rather than focusing on it seems like they're still going to have the High Republic lines of comic books, but that the main Star Wars comic book line is going to be focusing now on the period between those two movies. And it makes me wonder if we might get series related to Ahsoka, Mandalorian, the characters that we've gotten to know
Right.
from the Disney Plus show. So far, as far as I know, don't have comic books or graphic novels or anything like that to their name.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the time period in question, right? And if there's a cohesive narrative that they're trying to put together there, it would make sense for them to do that. It also makes sense, like why we've had. You were joking, we didn't have to wait that long, but again, it's all in your perspective, right? It it has
Except
been kind.
except for the fact, yes, it's been 9 years, but there's been a bajillion Star Wars things within those 9 years. I mean,
Right,
I mean,
right. Yeah,
again, we're in
yeah,
our 15 years, we had Heir to the Empire.
yeah.
I mean, so, but anyway, like I said, get off
This
my lawn.
this time
Uh,
period though, like between Jedi and Force Awakens, is sort of unexplored.
yeah,
Um, and I think like that's where people are really anxious to see more. Um, Heir to the Emperor is a perfect example because like that's where we older fans previously got to see things being set. They got those stories,
see,
and then
and
they retconned all of that away, and now people are still, I think, are still sort of curious about that era.
see, to me, because we got the sequel trilogy and everything that's been kind of Disney Plus-ish, except for the Acolyte, has been post, you know, most of it's been post Return of the Jedi. Um, I and we'll talk about it a little bit when we talk about the Acolyte. That's why I'm actually more excited about the stuff that comes before the prequels, because the rest of the stuff I can draw the connections. I can the lines are faded, but they're there. It's kind of tough to see how did because we really don't know what the Jedi look like at their prime. We didn't even get to see that in the Acolyte. I mean, so it's like, how did they go from that to just, you know, rock bottom and all that? So that whole path that is truly unexplored, that makes me excited. And maybe that was kind of one of the little letdowns of one of my expectations, one of the little letdowns of the Acolyte. But like I said, we can talk about that later. So, um,
Yeah, well,
but
uh,
I mean, it's
well,
cool. We'll see what the comic book looks like. So sweet.
let's move right quick then, because in order to get to the Acolyte. Let's talk about the next show is more likely going to come out after Skeleton Crew, which is Andor. So for the longest time, it's been reported that we wouldn't see some of the characters that we saw in Rogue One, most notably director Krennic. Uh, Ben Mendelsohn had said the actor portraying him, had come out and said, no, I don't know anything about that. Much the same way I believe as Alan Tudyk said he had heard nothing about his role as K2SO in Andor. But I think we're pretty much guaranteed to get him. Well, an exclusive for the playlist, apparently. Mexican filmmaker Alonso Ruiz Palacios, who is directing the last three episodes of Andor, kind of let it slip. He said, quote, while he was being interviewed about some of his movies, started talking about Star Wars, he says, quote, directing episodes of this series was a treat, especially directing heavyweight actors like Stellan Skarsgård, Forrest Whitaker, and Ben Mendelsohn. So sorry, oops, you
Well,
weren't supposed to
okay,
tell us, but
all right. So I mean, what's the Futurama mean? Shocked. I'm shocked.
mhm,
Not that
not
shocked.
John.
It's like so. I mean, what would be a shocker is if it's like you know Harrison Ford is in Andor. That's something you keep under wraps. Or Mark Hamill is in Andor. Or something like that. I mean, Ben Mendelsohn, we got to keep that a secret. Really? The guy that we already know is working on the Death Star? It's like, I mean, that's an easy. I mean, that's not a
Particularly,
that's not a world rocker. And Forrest Whitaker was, in the first season. So it's like, I mean, shocked. Not that
yeah,
shocked.
particularly when you consider that Ben Mendelsohn was just down the street working on Secret Invasion. It's at this point also, so it must have been pretty easy to just go, okay, go from this studio at Pinewood to this studio at Pinewood, change outfits, deliver your lines, get back over to the other side. That's all we need you for. It doesn't necessarily require him to be making a week long commitment for anything. He did admit in an earlier interview that he knows that the final scene of the show is no secret. It's going to be Cassian walking across the tarmac to get in the ship to go to the rings of Caffrine to go meet the informant, Pivot, Daniel, who's the character that he kills at the start of Rogue
Yeah.
One. So we know that's going to be the final scene that we're going to see out of Andor, and he already knows it because, again, all this will eventually connect with Rogue One, which only leads further credence to the idea that we should see director Krennic, we should see all some of these characters who from the movie.
Do you guys think um do you think it's necessary to keep cast members secret? Does that does that tell you any? I mean, I don't know. It just seems like that's kind of I totally understand keeping, you know, images and, but it's like I don't know. If they cast, anybody, is it like what okay, great. That's awesome that they're going to be in it. Doesn't tell you anything. I mean, I don't know. It seems kind of silly to me.
I think up to a point. I think it depends. It depends on the role you're playing and if there's any previous connection to the property. I mean, if you say cast Ben Mendelsohn to this, okay, there's more to it because he was involved in Rogue One. But it's not the same as say
Hayden Christensen.
casting.
If you say
Right.
Hayden Christensen in it, that throws a wrench into things a little bit. That's like, that's a surprise. Or Frank Oz is going to be, Frank Oz was on set. I mean, those types of things would make fans go, "Ee!" But we're Ben Mendelsohn. I mean, it was great. He was great. He's great. It's Krennic though. It's like, okay, that makes sense. So,
Yeah, there's a sliding scale, right? It just, you got at one end, you've got Ben, and we all love Ben, but at one end you got Ben, and on the other end you got, like, I don't know, Mark Hamill or Harrison Ford or somebody. So it's like, yeah, there's just, you keep it under wraps if it's Luke or Han, but
it's like you're gonna go see U2, and it's like we're not gonna tell you who the opening band is. And you get there, and it's like either the opening band is, the Rolling Stones or your brother's cover band. It's like it's I don't know. Anyway, sorry, we're just dwelling too much on this. That's my fault. But
No, but to your point, and I think that speaks to something. There is, I mean, this is something you can pull up easier on a stage where you're performing. You know, if you two's playing at the Superdome and they decide to bring out Irma Thomas, the trombone shorty, or it happens a lot during Jazz Fest where, hey, Elvis Costello decided to jump on stage with Galactic, or I don't know, Florence Welch decided to get on the stage with Tank of the Bangas. Oh my God, this is awesome because it's unexpected. It seems spontaneous, and sometimes it is, a lot of times it isn't. But it feels way more natural than, and we accept it way easier than we do necessarily when it's, oh, so and so is going to be in this season or in this movie, and like for example, talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, like everybody's already like, we know who Lady Wolverine is, and we know about this other huge cameo, and I'm like, okay, their characters are Marvel characters, so yeah, they should be in this. So that's where I think we don't quite give it the same level of heft because we go, yeah, time to plan this versus when just automatically this great performer gets on stage with other great performers and you get something that's only going to happen at that instance.
you know who I want to see in Andor? Enfys Nest.
I was just gonna say, like, I was racking brain for like other solo characters, Kira maybe, Maul. You know, um, there's a few that sort of fall into this era that you could dump in there that might be really interesting or fun. But
And I still contend, my wife is right. An Enfys Nest show would be a great show.
it'd be better than Secret Invasion.
It'd be great Star Wars. It's like just it's rebellion adjacent, and it's I'm sorry. Okay,
Hmm.
all
Well,
right.
speaking of shows, we'll go to the last story, and this will kind of guide us into the story of the Acolyte. Entertainment Weekly had this massive interview with showrunner, creator, writer Leslie Headland about the season and what she wanted to do, what things she wanted to get in on screen, and the kind of the headline is kind of the is that she has heard nothing about a potential season two. So unlike some of the other shows which we already kind of knew at the start, okay, we're going to get another season. This one, she says nothing. She knows. She says the big fat zero from Lucasfilm and Disney Plus, whether or not we will see any more of the Acolyte and its characters. She does say she wants to take a break. I mean, she has been living nothing but Star Wars and Acolyte for the last couple of years, so she says she wants to get away from it for a while and kind of have a reset. And she does admit that the only way she was going to do, by the way, she the biggest character she says she missed she didn't get as much to do as she wanted was Master Vernestra Rowe, which was played by her partner. And then she says she loved getting her as a younger, seeing her in the High Republic books, and then getting to play her, see her as an adult, far more mature character. And then they kind of asked her, well, what was something that you said I needed to get in this? And she said, the dangling of other stuff. Quote, the dangling of other stuff, especially the legacy stuff like what's Manny's name, Yoda, Plagueis. She flat out says that is Darth Plagueis. And what the background is with Ernestra, her relationship with the Senate, how that's going to unfold with this sort of internal review of the Jedi. Where does that lead? So she says she wanted to get all this stuff in. There was some stuff she wanted to kind of button off, and she definitely wanted to make sure she got that in there. So, well, next break, she says for her, we'll be getting season two if they can.
Well, all right. Well, let's dive in right there.
Mhm.
So we have I don't know which one of you wrote down these list of questions, but so it's Fredo. So
And
we're
can I throw a caveat at the very front? Because again, we may get a little negative here.
sure.
I just want to say, like, at the outset, I appreciate that this show exists.
Hmm.
And I think, like, just from the perspective of the fact that they were going to try something new and different with it. And this is something that I've talked about on this show over and over and over. Don't give me the same story.
Hmm.
Give me something new. Give me something different. I would be the biggest hypocrite in the world if I said, well, they didn't try. They tried. right?
Very
And then
interesting that you said
secondly,
that. Okay, keep
and then
going.
secondly, the whole diversity angle of this, which again, I think they should be applauded for that. That you're folding in new fans, you're folding in people who have been underrepresented. I think that's commendable. So I like at the outset, I want to say those two things.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. It's interesting that you said that they tried. And I'm going to put it in a perspective. So the first question that Fredo wrote here, was it better the second time around? Did things make more sense? I'm going to start by saying, in certain parts, yes. In a lot of parts, no. I found myself actually more frustrated in some respects the second time around. And here's my it kind of in that umbrella, my problems is motivations are not clear across the board. I can't figure out. I understand that, okay, like I said, May makes a shift to the light and OSHA makes a shift to the dark, but it's not clear as why. And it's not clear if May wants to kill Soul or doesn't want to kill Soul or what. It's not clear why Soul is convinced that OSHA is to be his Padawan. It's not, all the motivations are just like all over the board and ambiguous. I will say one thing. If you go from episode to episode without a week in between, you're not as herky-jerky and mad. It's like, it feels kind of like a natural transition. The transition, from episode the day to night, I remember Fredo tweeting, he said he literally screamed, come on, but I mean, the way that they handle that transition between those two episodes was great. The fight scenes are incredible. I think like every action scene is great. I really liked the Teach Corrupt episode even more. I think that's some of the best Star Wars that we've seen. Just from, and I know I was critical because of some of the derivative language that they used. But my problem was more in character development and motivations. And I wondered, and this is kind of what I was saying at the outset, each episode had a different writer. Not saying that the writers were bad, but when you have, it's kind of if you were the writer and you knew you had to get from point A to point B, then I guess it seemed like everybody was sticking to the story, yes, but making things murkier because they had their cool things that they wanted to do. And so we got some repetition, we got some unanswered questions and things like that. So I wonder, while yes, it's great to get more writers involved, is having a different writer for an 8-episode series hurting more than helping the story? Anyway, I'll just throw that out and you can address it if you wish in your own comments. But who's Dave watching it the second time around? Was it better for you?
I didn't watch it a second time.
Fredo, second time around.
I'll tell you why. I didn't want to.
That's interesting.
I didn't want to watch it a second time. I was not interested. I didn't believe that it would improve.
I will agree with you a little bit. I almost didn't do my homework either because I just really didn't want to, but I did just to give it a shot. But that's why I only did like a handful of the episodes.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And I mean, it just, it wasn't, at the end of the day, I just don't think it's for me. I don't think this show is for me. But like, I'm not going to poo-poo it, because like for a lot of people, there is a lot of value in this. And you touched on some of the high points too, like with the lightsaber stuff. And it's incredible. And I have an idea about that, which I want to get to eventually. But um, I'm an old white dude that like is devoted to New Hope and Empire, and so like I don't think I was being courted necessarily with this show, and again, like I don't need to be courted with every property that comes out. I'm not that egocentric. It's fine. But like at the end of the day, it it
But
didn't connect with me.
and here's okay. So before Fredo gets to talk, here's the thing that I kept coming back to was that it looked like Star Wars. It sounded
Mm-hmm.
like Star Wars. It had it. I mean, you turn on the TV for a split second, you know it's Star Wars. Here's the thing: is that it's something within the writing because I could have given a rat's behind about a lot of the characters.
Right.
I didn't care. I cared a lot about Jackie getting killed. I did not like that in the moment, and watching it a second time, I'm still like, oh man, here it comes. And Yord, same thing. I don't know why I cared about those two, but when Osha, choked out Soul a little bit, but I mean, I didn't feel like I was emotionally attached to him either. You know, they could have, you know, somebody could either May or Osha could have been, cut down, and I wouldn't have. It would have been like, oh, okay. And so I don't know. It to me there was nothing compelling in the story, and I was like, it should be. I mean, it's weird because it's like I don't know what it is, but I just did not really give a rat's butt about a lot of the characters.
Who are we supposed to root for? Like at the end of the day, is it Dollar Store Obi-Wan? I mean, like there's no one else left at the end of this because they killed everybody else, right? And so like it's the evil people, the quote unquote bad characters. Um, I they they had moral failings that I could not identify with or uh, feel good about, and I didn't particularly enjoy their characterization either on the whole, Osha and May in particular. Um,
I
I
have
didn't
to
like Vernestra's characterization or her
again
character.
and
Um,
motivation. I don't know what it was. Never she was up to something. Never quite, never quite understood exactly what she was up to. I will
yeah.
say I
What
I
are we
did
left with?
I did care more about the second time around, especially watching, like I said, Teach and Corrupt again. Um, the Stranger,
Got here.
he's interesting to me. He's
He's well
interesting to me.
acted. That's part of it, right?
He's very. I mean, but he's also yeah. So, but like I said, so he's very interesting to me. Fredo, Dave, and I have been talking. Sorry. What? How about second time around? What was your?
Yes. Okay, so let's start with the positives. Second time around, I think the episodes connected better. Okay,
Okay.
connected better from moment to moment. I think there was a natural flow, particularly, yes, if you skip the flashback episodes, 3 and 7, if you just watch that one story, the first two episodes, 4, 5, 6, and 8, it flowed really nice. And I think that there was an idea behind that as we went along, we would uncover more and more about these characters. I agree with you to a certain sense. The story does not serve its characters well, by which I mean, you know, I can accept the mystery at the beginning. I can accept it's the J.J. Abrams' famous puzzle box. I can accept that in episode 1 and 2. You don't have to show me all your cards. By episode 7, you should be showing me. I should know why May is looking to, goes to a planet to attack Master Andara. And it should not just be, hey, Master Andara was involved in the attack on your family. Like, what makes you seek out somebody with so much in your heart that you want to go kill them? And then follow that up with Tormund. It just felt, and then because what I found was most jarring was the turn halfway through the story when May decides to betray the Master and Osha starts having doubts about the Jedi. Like if that had flowed more natural, if we had gotten this, one of the questions that I didn't that I did put in there about should there have been more episodes. I think this is a story that's still missing an hour or so of just sitting with these characters and getting to know them. I think that's why people connected and then felt upset when George and Jackie left because they were the only ones who felt like they were having any fun.
So
They were the only character who felt like they were breathing, living, existing in Star Wars. Everybody else felt like they were in Masterpiece Theater
to
and
that point,
not really in that story.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. To that point, and this is why I want to. Like I said, I was a marching band director, and you design when you took your band to competition. You were judged on the design of your show, the design of it, and then also there's another category for the execution. So I understand what the design of the show was and what their intent was. I don't think they executed on it well at all. And that's why I said you had too many writers, because it was like and I keep coming back to motivations, but it's like, why did Indara make the decisions she made and change her mind on things with Osha? And it's because, and so I got to thinking about this. It's like the reason why this is not satisfying to me. It's like I said with A New Hope. It's satisfying because it's a story, and they only leave like one or two things unanswered. It's like Darth Vader got away, you know, and and it's like, but I can watch that and feel good that it's so. If we don't have a second movie coming, we're okay but Darth Vader getting away gives us a little bit of something, something. Even Empire, the only questions that were there was like, is Darth Vader Luke's father? And are we going to get Han Solo back? Here it was, you know, why did this person do that? And who's that person? How does Chimere know Master Soul? And why can't Master Soul know who Chimere is? And, why are people keep disappearing and, like transporting different places? And why is Kelnaka why is he gone nuts? We're left so many things that we're left to infer, and I'm okay with inferring. I'm okay with, like, use your mat. You can draw the lines, but at some point you have to cut to the chase and say, I'm doing this because this. You just have to literally say that in the show to cut to the chase, because there's, like I said, so many questions left unanswered. And so they should have just said, here are the two questions we want to leave unanswered. And if we can't get to the other stuff, then cut it and figure out what your story is. Because I didn't know what.
We were sold a mystery, and the mystery itself was sort of poorly executed, right? And I could get on board even with that. Attack of the Clones, I adore that movie. I love that movie, warts and all, because they swung for the fences. And you know why I still love that movie, as flawed as it is and as problematic as it is because there's this sense of hope. I go back to that same thing that Aaron brought up last week on last week's show, which is like, that's an essential component of Star Wars. Like, even when you look at Andor and how dystopian that is and how gritty and depressed everything is, by the end of it, you have hope. One way out, like that's there. That's not here. There is none of that here. And so, like, when you get a story that's not executed well, and then on top of it, the story itself is sort of depressing, and it's not very Star Warsy, in quotes, in that way, like, what do you got at that point? And that's why I mean, like, if we want to distill it to one thing, like, I don't like that.
Can I say this is why telling stories about villains is difficult?
Mm-hmm.
Every fanboy out there wants the story about the bad guys. They want to see the bad guys because bad guys are cool. Bad guys are awesome. They get to do all the cool stuff. They get to act out as they want. That's why when you get games like Knights of the Old Republic, whatever, everybody wants to play the Sith characters. They want to go renegade. They want to do all the dark side stuff because You want to go down the path that rocks. That's the nature of things. But stories of this caliber are difficult to tell because ultimately you are asking the audience to connect with the villain. And your audience should, by their nature, reject that. They should, I'm trying to think of stories like maybe something like The Godfather is where it's a great movie about a great villain where the audience ultimately connects, even though towards the end they're like, okay, I'm actually cheering for the guy who's murdering people left, right, and center and who's going to
Well,
dominate organized crime. The point is, it takes a special kind of magician to make people connect, like, or even something like Scarface where he takes special actors and special stories and special moments to connect with it because most people by their nature should reject the idea of liking a story where the bad guys win. And to Leslie Headland's credit, she always says she wanted to explore that aspect within this story, and she did. So it's not surprising that we're rejected because this does not feel in Star Wars. You're right; it should be about hope and it
but
should
I
be
have
about finding the good thing, but we don't. Not in
but
this one.
I have no problem with I have no problem with that last shot with the fact that the bad guys won in this. I have a big just problem of how that all came to be. It's just it just
The
was
execution.
it was just not clear. I mean, I
No, it's
okay
the twofer for me. It's the two of them together, right?
now
That's too much for me to overcome.
now what if they would have tweaked it and instead of May um, having her memory wiped, what if the last scene with May with Vernestra was, I'm going to help you find my sister and save my sister. And she's, and bring her from the dark side. That would have been, you know, at,
But that's not the story. Now
but
you're
that would
writing
have,
the story to
Yeah.
give you the
but that
ending
would
you
have,
want.
but I mean, yeah, but I'm just saying I mean, that would have given the little bit of, I mean, they made the flippity flop. So it's like, you might as well, like you said, institute that little bit of hope. But anyway, so.
You asked us last week, or was it this? I think it was in chat. You asked us like, what makes a good ending, right? We were trying to evaluate how the series ended and the series kind of as a whole, but mostly how it ended. And I thought about that, and I have three things for you. You have like A plus or S tier level spectacle. Okay, you gotta wow me somehow, right? Um, Second thing, our main characters need a satisfying conclusion of some kind, a sense of growth, or at least the potential for growth. You need to know that they've been on a journey and that their story has sort of been told at this point. And then third, the outcome needs to feel earned. Like there has to be difficulty in it or even sacrifice in achieving it. And so, like, for me, I think the first thing we got, and I think the third thing we got, but we didn't get that second thing. Like, at least to me, we didn't get a sense of growth for these characters. Like, their motivations are all over the map. You don't know what they're doing or why or where they're going, and it doesn't make any
Well,
sense.
and that's to one of the questions, Fredo, here you wrote down. Any questions left unanswered you think should have been uh, touched upon this season? It's like, let's make a list. I mean, as I was rewatching this stuff again, I'm frustrated with the whole Vernestra arc. What the heck is going on there? I'm frustrated again with, Indara's, decision making. I'm frustrated with, why is Soul, like I said, so adamant about he's sure that Osha is meant to be his Padawan. It's like there. So there's,
Can I throw in something
yeah. Go
simple?
ahead.
Why the heck were they making such a big deal of May trying to get the lightsabers from the Jedi Masters?
Right.
Because in every one of those duels, particularly at the start, they make such a big point of May reaching for Indara's and Saul's lightsabers
By the
when
way,
she's been told she can't use a weapon, and then it comes to nothing. Again, they've used what little time they had on specific moments that then have no payoff. And that is criminal because, again, if you're going to leave the audience the way you're going to leave them, they should at least feel like, okay, it wasn't more than just spectacle. Like there was something being told or shared
And
here. And I think that's where a lot of the issues are coming.
and by the way, I have to admit that it's like how many of us were banging our heads on the desk when it's like you have to kill a Jedi without a weapon. It's like how's he gonna do that? How's he gonna do that? It's like force choke. Duh. I mean that's I didn't
or
think about it
lightning, or
until it happened. I didn't think about it. Um but there are there are others that are in there. It's like okay, so watching Day when um Kymir is leading May to Kelnaka, it's I mean
By the way,
there
how did
there
Tanaka die?
okay so that okay this is the thing. This is the thing that usually I am okay with Obi-Wan having enough time to get in hyperspace to get from battling Vader to Tatooine and rescuing Luke from the Inquisitor. I'm good with that because it's like maybe their planets are close by and he just did a quick little and then he was there. Fine with that. This one bothered me because Kymir's hanging upside down. May runs ahead of him, gets to Kelnaka's hut, and he's been already cut down with a lightsaber by Kymir. And it's just like, okay, when does this have time to happen? So it's like, yeah. So there are all these little things that's nitpicky though, um, but yeah, and like I said, unanswered questions. I want to know more about like why Kilnaka. Like I said, I can draw the lines about okay, so maybe he was still whacked out from being possessed by the witches, thus all the yin yang symbols all over his hut and everything like that. And I don't understand why what they did made one person kill himself and the other one, go on exile. So it's
Since
just
I, and watching it back, I think this is the thing that stuck out to me the most. Because this is the mystery. This is the essence of what everything's been building up to. At the end of the day, the core of the drama was built around the Jedi, or Jedi specifically, Saul and Torben decided to get involved where they've been told not to. And because of that, the witches, the coven that had Ocean May decided to fight them, and then they killed everybody, but not really. Because it's not, because again, the only person we see that is actively killed by anybody is Saul, defending himself, unsure of he sees Torben's eyes go black. He sees Mother Anastasia turning into mist, and so as something for man, then he just lightsaber sword. Okay, that was one. And then the rest of the coven take over Kelnaka. He uses his claws on Torben. He attacks Saul. I mean, what is the great sin here? Is the great sin that they got involved? Is the great sin that people died? Or is it that they decided to keep it all a secret to hide their own, to preserve their own hides, and the, the truth kind of kept eating at them? Because it feels like, okay, Torben, you were a Padawan. You were a child. You were, almost 19, whatever, but you were still very much a minor. You did not understand the consequences of your actions. Why the heck are you taking a 10 plus year vow of silence and not doing anything? And then the only thing that brings you out is May saying, here, you can either tell them the truth or drink this and kill yourself. It's just like, I would have thought that maybe they've been more active. And I think this is where the issue for me comes. If they had been more active in their decision making, in their plan, like they just said, the council is wrong. We are going to rescue these girls, and they got in their lightsabers up swirling and twirling, and they fought the coven and killed everybody. I could have believed, okay, maybe, okay, this is something where you have
agreed.
committed heinous crime. We will cover this up and we'll take this to our graves, and eventually it just eats out the four of them. But from what we see of Indara, she's kind of chill about things. Saul's, okay, disappointed himself, and maybe that's one of the difficulties is as this journey goes along, we find more about Saul. he seems less sure of himself. Okay, but Corbin, Kalnaka, I'm sorry, I don't get why you guys feel like you're guilty here.
Another aspect that and this okay, so we talked about the execution, and Dave, you mentioned acting, um, and I think I am pumping the brakes on being critical of Amanda Stenberg because oftentimes she was acting against herself, and
She had a really
I
really tough job,
I think
right?
so, yeah,
Yeah.
and that I mean how because there's you as an actor, it's my you feed off of you know the other person, you react to their way their face looks and everything like this, and um, I will say that her portrayal of May seemed a little bit more well thought out or well directed than Osha was always kind of so, but and then so anyway, like I said, I'll pump the brakes on being critical of that. Um, the other answers, things that weren't answered. I mean, they're okay. They're the same person, and it's like there should have been at least a little nugget about how this happened. I mean, and now we might not get a season two. I mean, this is. I'm sorry. This is National Treasure 2 all over again. Tell me what's on page 57. What's on page 57? And then sorry, no next movie, kids. So you're left guessing what's on page 57. So now we're going to get, they were the same consciousness split into two by the Force. We're talking about big stuff here, everybody, in the lore of Star Wars. And now it's probably going to get explained away in maybe a book
Comic book.
if we're lucky. I mean, so that bothers me a little bit. I will
Well, they
say
didn't
what's
need to do it, right? Like they didn't need to like wade into any of that water.
so it's
And so like I can't be too upset that we're not going to get any sort of resolution to it because like it didn't need to be there in the first
I
place.
wish they would have, like to Fredo's point earlier. It's like instead of doing the unreliable witness thing, make episode 2 the flashback of what went down and what we found out. Like basically combine those two flashback episodes into one so that we see, the Jedi motivation, we see the witch's motivation and what went down. And then and that they discover those they're the same person. And then instead of the second flashback episode, that's when you reveal how they were created. And then it just seems like that would have maybe propelled the story a little bit more and kind of cut to the chase because all the important stuff we just kind of glossed over. So, um,
And I think, unfortunately, because part of me was thinking as I was watching it, I was like, we got episode 3, which is entirely Osha's point of view, and we never got May's point of view, which I wonder if we had gotten those scenes, particularly her point of view when the Jedi come in, if we gotten that 2 episodes in before the final full reveal, or maybe rather than make it a full episode, intercut all those moments so that we can kind of piece it together as we go along. Because, like I said, the episodes that were not the flashbacks had their own drive. They were full going from step to step to step. And I think really the highlight of the series was episode day and night, 4, 5, which really connected things, really, brought everything to a turn. If they had done that, as opposed to try to give us one episode with an unreliable narrator, and then one goes, "Oh no, this is really what happened, kids." And okay, but who cares? You didn't spend enough time giving us OSHA, giving us May, letting us know because we start with OSHA very much lost out there in the
well,
galaxy and May with a purpose, and then we finish with OSHA with a purpose and May lost out in the galaxy, and I'm like,
again,
okay, so we're back where we started.
putting it in my band scenario, like the band I used to play in the Irish band, we would you have like three tunes like in an Irish session, you have you play three reels, each one three times. And if you are performing, if you're just playing that for dancers, that works. But if you're performing it for an audience listening to you, it kind of gets a little boring. So you try to arrange it. You take one instrument out, bring other instruments in, and sometimes we got so kind of stupid in our arrangement, tried to do too many cool things, and it just made there was no natural flow to the set. It was uncomfortable to listen to, it was confusing to play. And so again, that's my criticism of this, is that I think they set out to do a thing rather than tell a story.
I'll take it one further too, and this is where I circle back to the lightsabers. Which uh, she gave an interview, Leslie Headland, about saying her goal was to outdo the Phantom Menace with the lightsaber duels. And it's like, you know, arguably, um, we can debate whether like that was effective or not. Like you could probably devote a whole show to that because they were that good. Um, but I'm wondering, should that have been the goal? Because like this is where I go into storytelling mode here, Aaron. Because like when I was in high school, I remember doing ACT prep, standardized testing prep, and I was strong in English. I was a little weaker in math, and I was downright shaky in science. And
Thank
where I
God for
put
lab partners is all I have to say when it comes to science. Anyway, keep
where I
going.
pu- where I put my focus in my test prep was in math. I figured I was good in English, and I thought science was sort of a lost cause, so I put all my eggs in the math basket. And the end result was my math score came up, my English score wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, and my science score was sort of bad. And I ended up with like
You got what you worked for.
I got what I worked for. I got basically the lowest possible score I was willing to accept in that instance. And that's what I ended up with. And what I'm saying here, I think, is like were their attention too trained on particular aspects of this, and were they not thinking about, like you said, just telling a good story? Did the quality of the whole thing suffer because they were focused in on, lightsaber battles, or we've got to make sure that, our message is on point?
The unreliable witness,
Yeah, we got to do that, or we got to have our mystery. And it didn't come together.
See, and then I think this is a difficulty because we don't know what the discussions were behind the scenes. We don't know if they thought that. Part of me thinks that I'm sure Leslie Headland and her team were looking at everything going like, we are nailing this. This is we're coming together. This is awesome. Which is why you always should have a voice from outside the room come in and take a look at things. Because I wonder if somebody could have told them, okay, that looks great, but why are we telling Osha's and May's story? Why these two characters? What makes them different from, say, maybe telling Kymer's story? That would have been an interesting story. A former Padawan who clearly had a falling out with his Jedi master, who was this venerated prodigy, who's now on the Jedi High Council, and he goes and he finds uh, the big baddie, hiding underneath everything, and he trains under him, and now he's coming back to take his revenge. Maybe that would have been a different story. I still don't understand why we're telling the story of the Acolyte under Osha and May. Maybe if there is a season two, we'll get that answer. But from what we gather here, all we know is that they're powerful Force users who came through a virgins in the Force, and
we don't even know that.
that's
We don't know
well, that's the
that
thing.
for
It's like
sure.
we don't know why they're motivated to do what they do, why they are who they are. All we know is that they got a grudge against the Jedi. And okay, maybe again, if the story you're trying to tell is an exploration of the dark side, an exploration of falling to the dark side. The thing that popped in my head is I don't know if you guys ever saw Midsummer, the horror movie by Ari Aster with Florence Pugh,
No.
where basically it talks about how she's this distraught young woman whose family dies under tragic circumstances, and she goes with her boyfriend who's trying to ditch her to his this Swedish commune out in the countryside of Sweden. Basically, falls in under a cult, and it discusses some of those ideas of how removed from your community, removed from everything disconnected, feeling emotionally vulnerable, you can become full and become susceptible to joining a cult, that kind of thing. And I wonder if maybe that's where this was supposed to go, but with the cult being the Jedi, maybe the cult being the Sith. But again, all of this is suppositions that we're supposed to infer. Nothing's ever stated about Osha or May beyond, hey Osha, you're out, being a mechanic out in the middle of the galaxy, and now somebody who looks like you kills somebody you used to know, and we think it's you, but then we find out it's not you. But here, come along on this journey. Why? Why didn't you say, okay, we know it's
So
not you, we'll put you back over here, and not worry about you? There's never a thought process of this is the only way the story can go.
well,
And
it's in movies in general. Well, let me ask you guys this, and Dave's alarm has gone off. I'm going to go back to marching bands. At the end of the day, what does a marching band need to do? Two things.
play,
You need to play well, you need to march well. The only two things you need to do. Doesn't matter what tune you play. It doesn't matter if you're high stepping or if you're core stepping or anything. You just need to play well and march well. So what is at the end of the day, what does a movie need to give us, or what does a TV show need to give us? It needs to give us a coherent story, and characters that we can connect with and root for and root against. You know, and I think some of the Star Wars stuff that we're getting is they're focusing more, well, not just Star Wars stuff, but movies. They, like I said, to Dave's point, it's like they're focusing more on the special effects than, the story, or they're focused more on, using this bit of technology rather than the story that they're telling. So I guess, the end of the question here is, do I think there's going to be a season two? I don't know. Do I hope there's a season two? Yeah, I kind of do, because I need some of these things answered. Because otherwise, like I said, it's going to be National Treasure 2 all over again, and I'm going to be upset. Ahsoka, it was the same type of thing. There was too many questions that were unanswered. But now that I know we're getting a second season, I'm okay with that. And so I think that in the future Star Wars, if you're listening to this podcast, you need to have fewer dangling items. Just pick a couple and hedge your bets, because it's like we might not get a season two. I'm okay with if there's that one thing out there that Darth Vader gets away. I'm not okay with all the other things. So, yeah.
Well, it's not necessarily fair, but contrast this to Andor. Well, at the end of Andor, you got an ending. Well, wasn't great.
Even if there was,
Like,
but even if there wasn't a second season, and of course,
if there
you're
wasn't
right,
a second season, I
you're
would
right.
be
It's not
disappointed,
exactly
but
fair, because we know what Andor goes on to, Cassian goes on to
this
do.
is true, right?
But, no, that's
But
fair.
like, would that have benefited this series for it to have like tied into something else a little bit further? But I don't think so, because like, to me, some of these connections, they almost work against the show.
See, and I don't even need the Acolyte to connect. It can stay 100 years out. It's just,
My point is, I don't care if I get a second season. Like with Andor, I do, but because of the quality of the show.
yeah.
I mean, I, I thought that season one ended fine, and I would be able to survive as an individual if I never saw a season two. But like, I wanted more because it's good.
And I think it was Fredo that said earlier, you're right also, that a second season of the Acolyte would be awkward, because all the Jedi that we cared about, except for Vernestra, everybody else is just dead.
Oh,
So
They're
it's like,
gone.
so we would get a whole new cast of, of Jedi, and so you'd be
Which,
starting at square one. Um,
well, we get a whole new cast of red shirts
yeah,
for them
right.
to kill. Because again, there is an interesting story discussing the idea of falling to the dark side. We got that with the prequels. We saw that with the Clone Wars. We've seen this story, and we know that when told well, it can work. To me, the issue continues to be, and maybe this is something where David might agree with me. I don't know that I care about these characters. And I don't necessarily mean, oh, where they're going. I mean them as characters. No, I always think back to something George R. Martin said. The creator of Song of Ice and Fire said, you write good characters, and if you do that, your audience will stick with you. Basically, that's what he said. Because the idea is, character that your audience connects with is somebody they'll follow, no matter the ups and downs, no matter the twists and turns that their story takes. Whereas these characters, again, I don't know enough about Osha or May or Kymir to think, do I want to follow them any further?
But you know what?
Or am I,
I agree.
or
I
is this
agree with you
just,
100% because I agree with you 100% because when I was, let's see, like 1981 when Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark came out. So what?
Mhm,
I am 8 years old at that time, and I didn't know squat about Indiana Jones. But the day after seeing that movie, I was playing Indiana Jones in the backyard. I
mhm,
wanted to be that character. And it would be interesting to ask kids: are they out in the backyard? Okay, this time you be Osha and I'll be May, or you're Vanestra and you know what I mean? Are they that like I said in recess? It was always playing Star Wars, and it was
mhm.
like who gets to be Han, who gets to be Luke. It's like we only saw one movie, and we were connected to those characters. And yeah, I'm with you, Fredo. I don't have connection to any of them.
And there, like I said, there's ways to tell stories about villains. I mentioned The Godfather, Michael Corleone's fall to the dark side, realistically.
Well,
Uh,
Thanos is
and
an interesting villain.
mhm,
Yeah, he
yeah,
wins at the end of Infinity War, right? And
right, Thanos does. And I think, I'll go back to the quote that I used last week about your enemy's never a villain in their own eyes. And that's how you tell a compelling story about bad guys or bad character, the villains. It's you don't make them out to be villains. They're the heroes of the story. It's just as the story progresses, you start realizing, okay, maybe I'm not down with what they're doing, but I can understand it. I can see their point of view. And again, the problem here is we don't know what Osha's point of view is. We know that she was a child of a coven of witches who came to believe that her sister set a fire and killed her parents and everybody she knew. We know that she wanted to become a Jedi for some reason. She didn't want to be there. She wanted to be. The Jedi offered her an out. She tried being a Jedi for a few years. It didn't work out. And then she was just lost in the galaxy. And then somebody accused her of murder and she had to come back. And somewhere in the middle, towards the end, she decides that her best course of action is to take up with the hot guy in the goofy mask and, kick and force choke her old master who supposedly saved her all those years ago. That's her arc. That's her story arc. And now she's the villain of the story and she's going to learn how to be an even more powerful villain. But none of those steps are connected in a way that makes you go, I can understand why she did that. Even if you want to say she's justified in killing Saul because it was Saul's actions that made all this happen, none of her journey, all of her journey basically feels like it was other people pointing her and making her, dragging her along. It never feels like she's got agency in her own story.
yeah, like even if like you find like some of her characterization okay, and you can buy it for whatever reason, like there's still so much there where like why like he she kills him before he can explain anything to her. Well, that was convenient. I mean, like again, like not that that would make a difference, right? But it it would maybe give you a little bit of pause. But no, we can't have that because by the end of the story, she's got to be evil, right? She's got to go off with the other bad guys. And so it's like, oh, or why not take your twin along with you? oh well, there's no symmetry in that. We have to put the twin over with the Jedi um, so that she can be in a different place. But why? And there's
If
again, it's doing things to your characters to try to get them to a point where you want your story to end up, but not being true to them in the
yeah,
process.
if OSHA would have, like, each episode had something, like, had an incident where it would be like, oh crud, she's a little dark, or
Yeah, a little bit more.
like just
Yeah.
each episode something that would lead you to the fact that, okay, at the end, okay, yeah, she has issues and now she's, seduced by the dark side, and there, yeah, I agree with you, but she was kind of made out to be this
Yeah. There was zero
this
until she put that helmet on,
right.
right? Zero. And then
I
puts the
mean,
helmet
a
on.
little bit when she took the lightsaber to Chimere and said, that, I failed. It's because I couldn't let go of my anger and resentment and stuff like that. It's like, that's when I was like, okay, this makes a little bit sense, but it's kind of a little, then it's just
She didn't do it.
dropped. Anyway, we're
Okay,
running
good.
around. Okay, go ahead, Fredo. Last word. We're
It's
running
okay.
around the tree.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when did we see her angry in this show? When
Yeah,
did
me
we
either.
see her that anger that she's described that she's carrying? Did we ever see her angry until she kills Saul?
And even when
Well,
she kills Saul, she's not displaying any anger.
she was very emotional, like I said, in that episode with the stranger, when she was, when she had, like I said, the lightsaber to Chimere. That was a burst of anger. Um, but yeah, for most of it, no, it was kind of level-headed kid type of a thing. Um, well, like I said, obviously not our favorite, but I think, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this sits. It's like, it'll be interesting on those days when it's just like I'm bored, and like, do I go into Disney Plus and like, hey, I want to watch that episode? Is there an episode that I lean to, or, you know, let it sit for a while and then go watch it again and see if there's a different appreciation for it? I don't know. Um, I will say, I just wish that they would just stop. Maybe just keep it simple, stupid. Just tell a story, tell a good story. And let the.
I thought they did.
So anyway, if you
They
disagree with us,
tried.
it was a good
Do
idea.
do or do not. There is no try.
It was a good idea. Just they didn't quite hit the ball square. So let us know on Twitter, on the street corner, whatever, what you if you disagree with us, if you agree with us, whatnot. Um, Still, I will say, at the end of the day, any Star Wars is good Star Wars, and I'm glad that we have it.
It's like pizza.
Yep, that's right. So, but this is, yeah, but we will. Next up is what? Skeleton Crew.
Yep. So, and for the holiday season.
Um,
Wait, no, no, no. No, hold on. Lego Star Wars. We're getting Dark Jar Jar. Come
oh,
on
that's
now.
right. That's right. So,
Lisa
um,
gonna hurt Yusa.
cool. So, all right. Well, um, like I said, let us know what you think. And thanks for hanging with us and listening to us rant today. No hiccups, no coughing. So, hooray! And until next time, we will say who dat.
Who dat?
Good.
Everybody have a wonderful week.
McConkey.